Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started this morning. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the back wall of the legislative chambers, along with an automatic external defibrillator. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Here. Commissioner Mike Boyle is absent. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Friend. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, August 31st, 2021 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
She's trying. Let me just count you as a yes, Commissioner Borgeson?
Yep.
Okay.
It's not working.
Motion passes. Well, now,
Oh.
now we're having trouble too.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have resolutions D, E, F, and G. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote. Okay. Something's funny.
Well.
It's stuck on no.
Huh. Count you as a yes then, Commissioner Borgeson?
Yep, it's a yes.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0.
Next are protests. We have three items, and they are all for personal property penalty. The first one being the protest of personal property penalty for Richard Flynn by Ronald W. Ferdig, 13616 Pawnee Road, 68142. And Mr. Goodwillie, are you wanting to speak on all of these?
I am. Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds Office. For the record, could I get some help? These penalties are statutorily mandated for late returns. Thank you. I would bring your attention to 77-1233.04 sub 4 for valuation added through the filing of a personal property return on or after January 1 shall be subject to a penalty of 25% of the tax due on the value added. This isn't something that our office dreamed up. This is something that the legislature mandates. And in turn, 77-1233.06 sub 3 does provide for a protest, but there are some constraints on what the county board can do. It can't waive or reduce a penalty that was correctly imposed and correctly calculated. Now, it's constrained. Every once in a while we'll get one where there's an argument about did somebody file or didn't somebody file. But none of these three protests raise the issue of wrongly imposed or incorrectly calculated. The first one, item H, you get a letter from an accounting office, and they say, yeah, we filled it out, we just forgot to send it in. These guys hold themselves out as experts. In fact, their website tells us that they do more than just accounting. They provide the security of experience and the power of teamwork. Now, even if you could say that a new business, just getting their feet wet, had no reason to know they needed to file, that's not true of these guys. They did it, they just didn't file it. The second protest, item I, from Twin City Concrete Products, they're not alleging that the penalty was incorrectly imposed or wrongly calculated. They're just saying, well, we filed late, or we filed on time some previous years, so we should somehow get extra credit this year for missing. My suggestion to you would be, if you're on your way home today and you roll through a stop sign, when the police officer pulls you over for rolling through that stop sign, tell him, well, gee, I stopped there yesterday. I'm not sure that's a real good argument. And third, this is a letter from an accountant with a variety, that lists a variety of reasons that the penalty should be waived. Again, none of them has to do with the penalty being wrongly imposed or incorrectly calculated. It looks like that business couldn't get its act together and get the papers to the accountant to file on time. And then the accountant is saying that somehow they should get some credit because when they finally did get around to file, they filed an accurate and not a fraudulent return. They also make an allegation that they've never filed late before. That's not true. This business filed late a number of years ago, and they have had late tax payments besides. So I guess what I would point out for the record is these penalties are mandatory. The ability to waive them is somewhat constrained on protest. None of these three protests have alleged anything that would fit within the purview of the reasons such penalties can be waived.
Thank you. On number H, is there anyone here wishing to speak on that item? Item H. What's the will of the board for H?
Motion to deny.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I'm sorry, what Commissioner Rogers, my hearing seems to be getting.
To deny.
Deny. All right, thank you.
Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we're ready when you are, if you want to vote it to begin.
Please vote.
Okay.
Put me down for a yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Motion to deny passes 6-0.
Is there anyone here for item I, protest of personal property penalty for Twin City Concrete Company? Seeing none, what's the will of the board?
Motion to deny. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Friend. Any questions or comments? Please vote. Put me down for a yes, please.
Will do. Okay, motion to deny passes 6-0.
Item J, anyone here to speak on item J, protest a personal property penalty for Pattern On Call Advisors LLC? What's the will of the board?
Motion to deny. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote. Put me down for a yes, please.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next is a resolution, a request for the board to approve the treasurer's recommendation to deny the Form 457 application for vehicle tax exempt status for Spirit of Peace Church. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Kelly Horan. I'm with the Treasurer's Office if you have any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Item K. Please come forward.
I'm Michael Hannes. I'm director of Spirit of Peace Church Incorporated. I have filed the Form 457 asking to be exempt from the property tax associated with the registration for the vehicle for this year. And it's not clear to me, but I understand that there is some concern raised by the treasurer, the Douglas County Treasurer, and I have a document here. I don't know whether or not it's been submitted to you, because I do know it was submitted to the Treasurer, where the Finance Director has said that the purchase of the vehicle was solely in the name of Spirit of Peace, but I was added on the loan as director, and the vehicle for Spirit of Peace is solely for business and therefore is tax exempt. And on the back of the Form 457, that is one of the qualifications. The Spirit of Peace is listed, to my understanding, on the Nebraska title, and that would be 2A on the back side of the Form 457. Owned by an educational, religious, charitable, or cemetery organization, or any organization for the exclusive benefit of any educational, religious, charitable, or cemetery organization. And that's what the vehicle is used for. I say that on the front of the Form 457, and I have this document from the Finance Director, who is a third party, to back that up. I cannot plead or discuss any more facts unless they're brought to my attention. I can assure you that from my knowledge, Spirit of Peace is the corporation owner, and I am the director, and any reference to me would be in carrying out my administrative duties as director of Spirit of Peace Corporation. So I suggest that, like in prior years, the board approve the exemption on the requested on the Form 457 for Spirit of Peace Church and the vehicle.
Commissioner Friend?
Oh, I'm wondering if anybody, Mr. Hannes, you don't necessarily have to get back up, but I'm wondering if anybody knows, or we can get some feedback from the Finance Director. A, who's insuring this vehicle? So in other words, are you or is the Spirit of Peace Church actually insuring the vehicle? That's my first question. The other one, which I think would be, I feel for your situation. I mean, it's a tough one, right? But that's pretty important, a question. The other thing that I was wondering is, and it's not as important, the value of the vehicle and how long, what type of note is on it or what type of lien is on it, right? If you know those answers.
Presently, I believe that the value of the vehicle is somewhat around $40,000, and that's somewhat the amount of remaining balance on the loan.
Oh, okay, I didn't see. All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hannes. And the other question, I'll look through the information, but we can get that later. It's a tough situation. Thank you, though.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments, Commissioner Rogers?
Ma'am, can you please come back up? The 6 test, am I right that you need to, I don't know if it's 6, but the test that you need to go through, which one of those did they not qualify for?
They did not qualify for state statute 60-3185. It says the motor vehicle must be owned and used exclusively by an organization or society qualified for tax exemption. Michael Haynes is listed individually as an owner on this vehicle, so it is not owned exclusively by a tax exempt organization.
Okay. So has it been approved in the past?
It has. We found this error back in June, and we sent him a letter instructing him how to correct the issue so that he could still qualify, and telling him what the renewal cost would be if he chose not to fix the issue, and was denied his tax exempt application.
So we gave them the opportunity to fix it?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Any
Thank
other questions or comments? Commissioner, were you done? Oh, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I was just going to ask, is there a response to that?
Pardon?
You just heard that the Treasurer's Office offered a way to cure this problem back in June.
The only information that I got from the Treasurer's Office to so-called fix the issue would be to go out and get refinancing for the vehicle. And I made that attempt. I talked to the person who's the company that's financing the vehicle now, and the representative says that they have this policy. They believe that their policy is an industry standard, and they're not going to see any reason to change that policy in order to hold me as director of Spirit of Peace also indebted to pay for the vehicle. Their concern was that across the nation, they have situations where corporations will purchase a vehicle without any individual director being obligated to fulfill his director duties, and they jump through legal keyholes in order to do something like sell off the vehicle or what have you, and then escape the financing obligation. And there was no other lender who would do things under any other condition. So when Ms. Kelly from the Treasurer's Office says that I was given an opportunity, I would call it a non-opportunity. And I had already discussed that with the representative, and I was told that they would have a discussion with me at that level at the Treasurer's Office, and they failed to do it. The issue here is they see things one way, and they see me, I think, as also being owner of the vehicle, but it is the corporation that owns the vehicle, and the only reference to me is as director. Therefore, it's one and the same.
So has Spirit of Peace owned vehicles in the past?
Pardon me?
Has Spirit of Peace owned vehicles in the past?
Yes.
And have those vehicles had a private individual's name as a co-owner on them?
Oh, does Spirit of Peace own any other vehicle?
Yeah.
No, only this vehicle. This is
Never owned another vehicle,
right. This is the only vehicle that
ever.
is in its history, and this is the only vehicle that we're referring to since 2019.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
If I understand you correctly, the problem is you have a private individual's name on as essentially kind of a co-owner or co-responsible
Correct.
person for the loan. Is that right?
Correct. And there is, we have in the past, you can have multiple names listed on a lien agreement and only have one of those names listed on the title. So the recommendation wasn't so much to change the lien itself, to remove his name from the security agreement, from the loan agreement, but rather just to remove his name, leave both names on the security agreement, and leave only one name on the title. That is an option that we've utilized in the past, especially with tax-exempt corporations.
And you explained that to Spirit of Peace.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
No, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else, questions or comments? What's the will of the board? Is there a second?
Well, hold on. Sorry, Madam Chair. This is not a protest. This is, if you deny, you're denying the treasurer's recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. Is there a second? I will second it for lack of a second. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Friend?
Just one. Ms. Kelly, can I ask you a quick question? Yes. Thank you. It's already been asked, and do you know who's insuring this vehicle? The treasurer's office has to know. They had to show proof of.
I don't have that information with me.
Okay.
No, I apologize.
Frankly, the reason I didn't throw a second up, and I was thinking about it, is because I'm not going to explain why, but I think that that's really important. Now, it might not be in regard to statutory authority, but I think it's important because that's required by the treasurer's office to actually be able to run a vehicle around town. For lack of more information, this seems to be fairly straightforward. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Please vote. Still not working. Put me down as a yes.
Motion passes 5-1. Commissioner Morgan voting no. Other commissioners voting yes.
Okay. No need for executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote. Put me down as a yes, please.
Motion passes 6-0.
Agenda for the Douglas County Board of Corrections. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Marine Boyle? Here. Commissioner Mike Boyle is absent. Commissioner Kavanaugh? Here. Commissioner Friend?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan? Here. Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Madam Chair.
Present. Item 1, approval of the minutes of Board of Corrections meeting held Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote. Put me down as a yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber or on Zoom wishing to speak to the Board of Corrections about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to our report from the Director of Corrections. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Myers, Director of Corrections for Douglas County. You have before you my report for the month of July. After the first month of the new fiscal year, we are $15,449 under budget. During the month of July, there was $378,582.26 spent on overtime. That's an increase of approximately $40,000 from the previous month. Contributing to this increase is an increase in attrition we have seen in the previous 3 months, and additional posts we are staffing, utilizing additional posts we are utilizing to complete projects from the remaining public safety bond funds, and those projects will be completed in August. Enclosure number 2, Community Corrections and Reentry Services. We are excited to announce that we have fully reopened the CJC. Work release and the Reentry Assistance Program began accepting clients on July 12th. Currently, we require vaccinations for all individuals being housed in those two programs. The 24/7 sobriety program had a very busy month. There were 71 individuals placed on the program. There were 3,461 breath tests conducted. 14 were positive for alcohol use. There were 20 no-shows for breath testing, and the overall compliance rate for breath testing was 99.9%. 63 individuals were monitored for a total of 1,660 days of SCRAM monitoring. There was 1 no-show, 2 tampering violations, and 1 alcohol violation. And the SCRAM compliance rate was also 99.9%. There were 861 saliva drug tests administered with 89 violations. And 26 drug testing patches were submitted for testing with 2 violations. As I mentioned before, work release reopened on July 12th and as of the end of the month had admitted 13 individuals. House arrest admitted 83 individuals. The Reentry Assistance Program, or RAP, also opened on July 12th and admitted 23 individuals. Limited programming resumed in community corrections in July, with a more robust curriculum resuming in August. Reentry services and therapeutic communities, there were 50 individuals admitted. Fully vaccinated volunteers were allowed to resume services, including faith-based and 12-step programs, and 1 individual achieved a GED. Pretrial services continued to provide regular information to the courts regarding candidates for bond reduction and early pleas in response to the pandemic. 14 individuals were referred for priority prosecution, saving 158 bed days. 420 individuals were placed on pretrial release. 1,552 individuals were managed on pretrial release with a 90% compliance rate. And 95 individuals visited the law library. We continue to participate in a year-long pilot project to implement the public safety assessment as a part of our strategy to enhance our pretrial release supervision and supportive services. A new pretrial case management software system is being implemented and will play a key role in pretrial release enhancements planned throughout the remainder of 2021. Enclosure number 3, compliance. Regular annual documentation is being collected for all compliance processes. On July 26th and 27th, our medical services were audited by a team of 3 auditors from the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. The audit team was complimentary of both our medical and custody staff. Follow-up documentation is being prepared, and reaccreditation of our medical services is expected to be granted by the NCCHC in the near future. Enclosure number 4, personnel. 11 officers below the rank of sergeant and 1 sergeant left employment in July. 2 of these departures were retirements. Among the rest, reasons for leaving included schedule changes associated with the shift bidding process, moving out of state, or feeling that another line of work would be better for their emotional and physical health. We are working on a variety of fronts to improve the quality of our staff's work life. Burnout and turnover are ongoing issues plaguing correctional agencies nationwide, and we are committed to not accepting that that is the way it has to remain here. Many staff are working on initiatives and projects that we hope will support our staff so that they are collectively, mentally, and physically healthier and are better able to withstand the tremendous challenges this profession presents to those who practice it. We anticipate a class, and actually it turned out to be 14 new correctional officers which began their academy training yesterday. In an attempt to recoup some of our staffing losses we've seen over the summer, we have rearranged our training schedule throughout the remainder of 2021 in order to accommodate an additional training class prior to the end of the year. I want to offer congratulations to Sergeant Kevin Kozel and Correctional Officer Robert Fisher on their well-deserved retirements. We are grateful for their service to our community. And I also want to congratulate Benjamin Gomez, who was promoted to the rank of sergeant. Enclosure number 5, population. There were 1,376 admissions. That is a modest increase. There were 1,365 releases, a decrease of 47. Our high count was 1,183, and our low count was 1,116. Our average daily population was 1,154. That's an increase of 17 from the previous month. There are 136 custodial sanctioned bed days. That is an increase. The U.S. Marshal population decreased. The ICE population decreased. The felony pretrial population increased. The misdemeanor pretrial population increased. Probation violations remained stable. The female population increased, and we operated 4 female housing units during the month. Enclosure number 6, medical, there were 1,133 intake screenings, and there were 357 health and physical assessments. Inmates were sent out 28 times for emergent medical care, 16 of those by 911. There were 12 hospitalizations, which resulted in, 12 hospital admissions, which resulted in 48 days of hospitalization. So our medical stats actually lag a month, so this was June, and it was a very, very active month. 28 people going out for emergency medical care is quite high for a monthly total for us. There were, going to enclosure number 7, mental health. There were 114 initial psychiatric assessments, 108 initial mental health assessments, 67 infirmary placements for mental health, 84 individuals were placed on drug and alcohol withdrawal protocols, 2 individuals referred to the Board of Mental Health, and 3 to long-term psychiatric facilities. Other noteworthy items: DCDC continues to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, Commissioners, this is for the month of July. It's a little later in the month than typical for me to be giving you this report, and some things have changed over the course of August for some of these next items. During the month of July, we had 3 cases of COVID among the incarcerated population. We had no infections among our staff. Approximately 75% of our staff has been vaccinated, and as of August 1st, we had vaccinated 997 incarcerated individuals, including 138 who were vaccinated, that should say, during July. Requests to be vaccinated increased once work release and WRAP reopened. We are currently requiring vaccination for placement in these programs. I do believe you'll see that number continue, vaccinated individuals to increase as we move forward. We continue to follow CDC guidance for correctional facilities. We had recently consulted with the Douglas County Health Department to develop a process to reduce the length of quarantine after booking from 14 to 7 days. A negative test is required to reduce the length of the quarantine period. And Commissioners, kind of the motivation behind that is we are simply running out of celled housing beds, and our longer COVID quarantine protocols make increasing number of beds unusable. And as the population has kind of crept up all over the summer, we were facing some interesting challenges and dilemmas. So we consulted with Dr. Hughes on this, developing an alternative process Individuals are not forced to take the test. They can choose to stay in quarantine for up to 14, they'll stay in quarantine for 17 days if they do not want to get tested. Most people are happy to get out of the quarantine with a negative test on day 7. In July, we implemented the following. On July 6th, the core group of vaccinated volunteers resumed in-person services. As I alluded to earlier, on July 12th, work release and reentry assistance programs reopened. And on July 26th, limited community corrections programming resumed. And there is currently not a timetable set for reopening the lobby for public visitation. However, one of our other projects may alleviate that need. Our inmate tablet project may have the ability for us to provide video visitation on the tablets, so that may, in the short or long term, take the place of the on-site visitation in the lobby. Work to implement the body-worn cameras, new security system, and tablet system continue. Several staff wellness and resiliency efforts are being developed to include, but are not limited to, establishing teams of trained officers on each shift who will respond as peer support specialists to their fellow officers during times of crisis. Developing spaces in the jail for staff to decompress and recover after traumatic events. Engaging in increased team building and staff appreciation activities to build camaraderie and trust among our staff. Developing options for healthier food choices on site. Officer training to further develop coping skills. And working with bargaining units to implement alternative work schedules. DCDC will be represented when the American Jail Association holds a Wellness and Resiliency Summit in Columbus, Ohio later this year. The fact that national organizations are devoting this level of attention to this issue is evidence that these problems are pervasive throughout the correctional profession. However, we will not accept that just because a problem has existed for many years that it must remain that way. DCDC will be dedicated to develop the best initiatives possible to support our staff throughout their careers. And Commissioners, I wanted to read, and I'm going to kind of edit it as I go. On top of, or superimposed upon all the challenge that we face with the pandemic and staffing, continues to be the issues of individuals with severe mental illness being incarcerated. And I don't know that the public is really aware of the scope of the steps that we take and the things that we need to do to try and care for individuals who are profoundly ill. And so a couple of weeks ago, and this is not uncommon, but this happens with regularity, but there are occasions where we have individuals who refuse to clean themselves, refuse to shower. This could go on for a matter of days or weeks, depending upon the health risk that is present that our medical team assesses. And at some point, we have to physically force people to take a shower. And so I wanted to read an email that was sent to describe the preparation and process of just doing something like that. This is something that happens nearly every day in our jail. And I'm going to, like I said, redact names of officers and the inmates as I read it. On Friday, August 13th, between 1:30 and 3 p.m., 3 officers will be completing forced showers for 2 inmates in Housing Unit 12. Another staff will be present as a representative of our crisis negotiation team in an attempt to gain voluntary compliance. If either of these inmates becomes severely combative to the point where they are likely to injure themselves or staff, the attempt to get them in the shower should be aborted. If this occurs, this information will need to be included on a use of force or any other informational reports that are generated. The plan is to extract each inmate from their cell and secure them in the housing unit gated shower. We will be using the shower cleaning hose cart pictured below with a wand to shower each inmate if they refuse to turn the water on themselves. In this circumstance, the shower cart should be hooked up to the warm water in the janitor's closet. The wand is long enough that can be held over the cage enclosure to shower the inmate. And I just, when people think of what do you do in a jail, people don't think of that sort of activity that our staff deal with on an everyday basis. Not only is this an issue because I believe that there's, I looked up the records of these two individuals. They were both women. One was a homeless female, I could tell by her address being the Sienna Francis house. She had a burglary charge. She had been in jail for a few weeks. The other individual had an assault on a healthcare worker and an assault on an officer charge. So I'm guessing, without seeing the police reports, being severely mentally ill, there was an altercation at a hospital or some other healthcare facility. And she's been in our custody for about 4 or 5 months now. And the fact that this is where they're at and that we have to put them, risk the safety of them and our staff in order to complete something as simple as a shower. The fact that we have to take all this planning and care to try and do it safely is an indication of the challenges that we face in the jail and the plight of the mentally ill in our community. And with that, I stand ready for your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, thanks for the report. The last case study you gave us, the last case study you gave us was pretty effectively presented, so thank you for that. The mental health issues are profound, and I mean, it's coming through. I mean, we get it. I think it's troubling. Other than what you've laid out in your report, I got a couple quick questions. Is there anything that this board can do to help stabilize from a retention standpoint? All of the things you just laid out in that case study depend upon people who have been trained and are savvy at dealing with that type of traumatic experience for a detainee. And just, you can answer after I get my second question. So I'm wondering if there's something that this board can do that we haven't done that might help stabilize that. The other thing is you put it in enclosure 4, we lost 11 officers below the rank of sergeant just in July. And this, I've been reading these over and over again for the last 7 months, and that seems to be not necessarily the norm, but it goes like this, up and down. And we have a class starting yesterday training 15 new correctional officers. Now, the timelines are troubling to me. They're troublesome because if the Douglas County Sheriff's Department lost 11 people in 1 month, we would have a huge problem, and you have a huge problem on your hands, I would assume, based on this type of thing. The trainees are not going to be done until, what, a month from now?
That's correct. And in addition, there'll be a couple-week field training, so it'll be about a 7-week process to get them from their first day of training to where they're actually working a shift on their own.
Okay. So I'm not laughing. I'm struggling with this. So the first question is there something we can do? I mean, if you had a wish list, what would be one of the first things that the board could actually put its hands around and grab at this very moment to help in that retention regard?
That's a, I think the board historically has been very supportive of this department. We now as a department have to respond and figure some of these things out on our own, and appeal to, from the leadership team all the way down to the newest officers, and be very united and committed to doing things differently. We made a lot of progress before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic took our focus off of a lot of things, and now we realize we got to get back in that mode. We've been in a worse situation than this during my tenure as director as far as staffing levels go, significantly worse, and we got all the way up to 100% staffing. Wasn't for very long, but we did make it earlier this year for a short time. We do see what I've noticed in my tenure is we do tend to lose more people over the summer months. And I do believe that one of the factors is we lose a few people every 6 months because of the shift bidding process.
1 minute.
We are working with the FOP to implement, we have an existing MOU to implement alternative work schedules for a portion of the jail. We're working on the parameters and to implement maybe a 12-hour shift model for a certain percentage of the jail, so that our most senior staff who've earned through their seniority and service their shifts and days off are not negatively impacted. But we also have enough people who have an opportunity to bid for a 12-hour work schedule with rotating days off that might work better for them and allow them to get through those difficult first few years.
Okay. Of the people that left, did anybody go to some law enforcement agencies that you know of?
There was in the previous couple of months. I'm not aware that we lost any, because I think most of the academies that were starting had started in May and June. I'm not aware that we lost anybody in July.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you for this. And I got to say, every time you come back to us, these things seem to get a little better and better. And I want to commend you and your staff for putting them together. I still struggle a little bit with some of the color graphs. It's just, I don't know if it's my eyes or the color combinations here, but the color on black is difficult to pull out on the black background. And then there's a graph in here that we'll talk about on the demographics. And all of the pie graph is green. Shading of green is great, but it's,
Understood.
hard to pull out sometimes. Anyhow, to the substance, I'm gratified to hear that you're still getting some use out of the public safety bond surplus. That seems like the gift that keeps on giving. Came in on time and under budget, allowing you to do some additional things. So kudos to you and the public property folks who oversaw that, doing a great job. The demographics, as you know, we come around to this every month, indicate a 55.12% majority population in corrections. Is that about right?
I actually think it's higher than that, Commissioner.
Okay.
I see about 36% appears, and you're right, this isn't a very good color scheme. We switched it from last month. I asked the person to switch it, but obviously we need something with a little more definition to it. I believe
So closer to 60% minority.
Yeah, I think there's the Caucasian population represents 36% or 35.89%.
Okay. Then the vaccination level among the staff is 75%, and as you probably have heard, the vaccinations are becoming mandatory for certain segments of our population per federal guidelines. Do you have any plans to require mandatory vaccination of the staff?
I don't know that I have the authority to make that decision.
Yeah.
I certainly would support any effort to encourage vaccinations or,
Right.
but, and we've continued to do that, and we'll continue to make that push now that the FDA has fully approved the Pfizer vaccine. It is, and I want to caution commissioners that 75% is really, it's a close, but it's still an estimate. We knew exactly how many of our folks were vaccinated when we were first doing it, but after.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would maybe urge you to keep in close touch with your colleagues around the country, because somebody somewhere, if they haven't already, is going to require vaccination of the staff.
Those places already exist. I know New Orleans
Okay.
has already.
We need to look at those models to see if that's something that we can replicate here. Also, I'm sure you do keep in close touch with our health department relative to this, but, it's just good medicine, public
Absolutely.
medicine, and particularly with our vulnerable captive population in corrections. You've done a swell job of keeping those numbers down, but it's just a matter of time. And the variants out there, it seems to be more infectious than the original COVID virus, so.
And my report next month to you will indicate a significant increase in the number of cases that we've seen already this far.
That's great. We're probably going to have to come back to this again, but the staff reductions due to attrition and the overtime increase are directly connected. Is that pretty much right?
It is, and also feeding into that, there's more vacations in the summer months. And like I said, we are kind of in a sprint to get several projects done, which require more staff.
I want to come back to you because it takes more time than we've got left to talk about the mental health implications, but we'll do that on my second one. I would just ask that, maybe going forward, you don't have to put this in the report, let us know, you mentioned the variations over the summer months of staffing, which is historic. The same with the population, I think, goes up in the summer months about now. And that's historic as well.
Correct.
Might be, good for us to know going back how that's been.
Time. Commissioner Maureen Boyle.
Thanks again for that presentation, Mike. Just a few things. First and foremost, I don't think anybody goes into corrections or into law enforcement thinking they're going to be dealing with mental health issues to the severity that you're describing. And just looking at the statistics you threw at us, there's looks like about 10% actually have psychosis. So 10% of the those in prison have psychosis. That's severe. That's like schizophrenia and the like. And so I want to stress that we're, as a board, concentrating on mental health initiatives in this community, and that's a big reason why. First of all, it's not good for the folks in the corrections facility who work there to deal with a population they may not be equipped to deal with, because that takes intensive care. And second, it's a complete disservice to the people who are put in prison for that. So anyway, understand we're putting forth initiatives to try to make that a better situation for everybody. And then other questions I have for you is, you mentioned that the emergency medical care increased significantly back in June. Anything that stands out?
Folks that participating via Zoom, if you could please mute yourselves.
There wasn't really a trend or anything that stood out. It just a variety of the same sorts of things that we see on a regular basis. A lot of our folks have not been very well connected to healthcare providers. They've lived lifestyles which sometimes put them at risk for a variety of health conditions. It just so happened to be a very busy month in that regard. And it's oftentimes people are sent out due to high blood pressure issues that are, way out of control, or, other cardiac issues, or, it runs the gamut. Basically, anything you're going to see in the community, you're going to see, in our jail.
Okay, so just seeing if there's anything else we can do to support that. The last question I have is, you talked, I think there's a goal to decrease the population, of course, especially with COVID being out there. I know that in the past, there was a backlog in the courts that actually caused some of this. Do you feel like that's still an issue?
I'm sorry, is that still an issue?
Do you think that's still an issue?
To an extent. I mean, the courts are still working their way through cases that have been stalled for a long time, and some of those have been exacerbated recently. There's been a few trials that have been continued just in the past few weeks because of the individual is housed in a unit where there was positive COVID cases. We just actually had a call yesterday with all the stakeholders of the criminal justice system to try and chart a path forward through that, because we don't know how long this is going to last, and people do have, we're often walking a lot of tightropes, where things we do to make us safer from COVID make us less safe in other ways, and also verge on infringing upon the rights of defendants by the continual delays of appearances. So we developed a process. Dr. Hughes was also on the call to help guide us, but we had a call scheduled yesterday with federal, district, and county court, the sheriff's office, police department. We included representatives from the county attorney, public defender, city prosecutor, all talked yesterday through a process to try to continue courts moving forward, even if, what we'll do is try to isolate individuals as much as we can before a known court date, and they'll be rapid tested every morning before they go to court if they're in a housing unit where there's been a COVID case recently.
Any more on televised court like we had in the past?
That is still going on. We may see an increased utilization of that for certain types of hearings that had started to go back to being in person. So the virtual court has never gone away. It'll probably become an increased proportion of how the courts do business. But that doesn't help with the serious cases. I mean, the serious cases require the accuser to be present so that they can confront their witnesses.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thanks. Back to this mental health issue, following up on Dr. Boyle's questions. If I'm reading this correctly, on page 44, the number of the population of inmates diagnosed with mental illness for the current month, out of an average daily population of 1,154, is 556. That's about 50% of your population with an initial diagnosis of mental health illnesses. And then, as Dr. Boyle pointed out, 10% of that average daily population, as you can see on page 43, actually present with psychosis, very serious mental health conditions. And, I could go back, I think you probably know, this hasn't really changed. This has been this way for some time.
No, it's been about, and actually, Commissioner, I do want to, this graph or this table, I think, needs a little correction, because that's people throughout the month. Some of those, they didn't necessarily.
That's why I compared it to the average daily
Yes.
population. That's people throughout the month. So it's kind of same. But it's about half the population is presenting with some mental health problems, and 10% of the population with really serious mental health problems. And it's chronic, systemic, ongoing, doesn't change. So, coming up on the situation that we have with the American Rescue Plan funds allowing us some latitude here, and the campus that you have for corrections down there with facilities that currently aren't utilized by corrections directly, would it be possible or beneficial if we looked at a way to take some of those very, very serious cases and separate them from the population and give them mental health assistance? I'm talking about doctors, not just medicating them, but doctors, and trying to treat them rather than just simply medicate them during their stay at corrections. so that they're out of the population. And, you know, you indicated some of the cases of, you know, people who are doing those things that you outlined that officers have to deal with. They have mental health problems. You know, normal, regular people, healthy people don't particularly do those kinds of things. Taking them out of the population and helping them medically, would that be a good thing for the staff and the overall population at corrections?
Yes, Commissioner, it certainly would be. We have, you know, I will always be an advocate for a safer, an environment that is tailored to the needs of treatment of mental illness from the very beginning, from the ground up, rather than one that's a jail that's retrofitted to the best we can. Those two things will never be the same. So that would take a lot of stress off of our staff dealing with individuals throughout the jail, as well as, I believe, hopefully achieve a better outcome for the individuals that we're talking about.
Again, are you aware nationally of other corrections departments that actually do this?
I am aware of a few places around the nation that have alternative placements either adjacent to or very near their correctional facility that law enforcement can access at the time of arrest, or divert them from arrest altogether. Each jurisdiction is set up a little differently, but there are places that have those types of facilities to accomplish the goals that we're talking about.
That would be a very, very valuable line of inquiry for us, and I'm going to follow up with you, but if you have some that you could share with the board. I know that we've talked about these at different hearings, but I'd like to look at those in depth at this point. I think that we got an opportunity here to do something constructive. We should do it, and it's obviously being done someplace else, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for what you and your team continue to work toward and do, and the care, the passion that you give as a service. I know that nationally there's about 48% of the people that are incarcerated have dyslexia, and I know we're looking at that. My friend and myself have had some meetings with some of those that provide the services on that, and I think that's a really high percentage. I also know that Commissioner Borgeson and Chris Rogers are working hard in that mental health area to do more in our community, and I think we're going to see some real positives, Madam Chairman, in the, not years ahead, but the months ahead in that area too, and I think continue to work with you on that. So we're hearing you, we're seeing, trying to do more in that area for sure. So whatever we can do in prevention with dyslexia, I think is helpful. So we'll continue to work at that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No other lights. There is a hand raised, but it keeps moving from person to person. Angela Gleason, is your hand raised?
Actually, this is just the mouse.
Oh, that's just the mouse.
Yes.
Okay, never mind. No other questions or comments? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
There's no need for executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Friend. Please vote. Please put me down as a yes.
Will do. Motion passes 6-0.
Agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Marine Boyle. Here. Commissioner Mike Boyle is absent. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. And please note there are minutes from our pre-board meetings of August 2nd and August 9th available as well. Item B, approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote. put me down as a yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
Next is our consent agenda. Items A through B, but please note, item H4 has been stricken. L has been stricken. And V, as in Victor, has been stricken. So I need a motion for consent agenda minus those items. Is there a second? Yes. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may note for the record on item N, as in Nancy, the contract being referenced was not published online, but you do have it in your packets, and it probably will be published after the meeting. But we just, talking to Teresa, we just felt I should note that.
All right, please vote. Put me down as a yes.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0.
We will move to proclamations. The first is a resolution honoring our county staff as County Staff Appreciation Day. And this is, I'll read the resolution. Oops, wait a minute. I have the wrong resolution. Whereas county employees serve as a cornerstone of their communities, dedicating their time, skills, and expertise for the benefit of their neighbors. And whereas the work of Douglas County employees is essential and often in person, such as operating 24/7 facilities in healthcare, adult corrections, and youth detention, 911, and law enforcement. And whereas Douglas County employees are the front lines providing exemplary service even amidst a global pandemic. And whereas COVID-19 pandemic disrupted county service delivery and program administration, creating uncertainty for employees and citizens on accessing essential services. And whereas Douglas County employees continue providing vital services in 2020, showing incredible leadership by taking personal risks, assuming new duties and responsibilities, and innovating new modes of service delivery. And whereas throughout the pandemic, Douglas County has allocated millions of dollars to promote the well-being, health, and safety of our residents through vaccine distribution and coordination, rental assistance, utility assistance, and community and small business grants, to name a few. Whereas Douglas County and all counties take pride in our responsibility to protect and enhance the health, welfare, and safety of residents in sensible and cost-effective ways. And whereas through their dedication to county work and commitment to public service, county employees across the United States kept counties open and their communities safer, healthier, and productive. Now therefore be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby proclaims August 24th, 2021 as the Douglas County Staff Appreciation Day and recognizes the exemplary service of all of its employees, dated this 24th day of August, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve? Second. And I just want to say, you heard from our corrections director, and I could have every single director come up here and talk about the stress that our employees have faced throughout this pandemic, from our first responders of 911 and law enforcement to our public health workers who have worked around the clock to give us the most updated data and safety issues for us, our long-term care facility, our community mental health. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. Everyone could come up here and talk about the stellar job that our employees have shown through this pandemic and continue to show. And so this is just something, it's small, but we wanted all the employees to know how much we appreciate them and their dedication to the work that they do for the citizens of Douglas County. So with that, please vote. Put me down as a yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next is a resolution honoring Mike McAvoy upon his retirement and expressing the board's appreciation for his many years of public service to the residents of Douglas County. And this is Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Do you want to read the resolution?
Is any member of the McAvoy family around? Come on up. Well, thanks for joining us today. So just going to read through the resolution and then hear if you want to say a few words. So, whereas Mike McAvoy will soon be retiring after many years of dedicated public service in various capacities, and whereas Mike McAvoy is the middle of 8 children, having been born and raised in rural Douglas County and having graduated from Waterloo High School in 1976, where he was a standout athlete, and whereas Mike McAvoy followed in his father's footsteps when he became an apprentice with the Steamfitters Union Local 464, where he eventually served on the union's executive leadership team and where he was involved in the apprenticeship training programs and serving as a champion for workforce development in the skilled trades. And whereas Mike McAvoy served nearly 20 years as a mayoral appointment on the City of Omaha Steamfitters Board, which examines new journeymen and master steamfitters for certification. And whereas Mike McAvoy is very passionate about workplace safety, getting additional OSHA certification to keep workers safe while on the job. And whereas Mike McAvoy was on the job site in the basement of Westroads Mall in December of 2007 when several people lost their lives due to a shooter at Van Maur. Mike assisted several workers and customers in taking cover and remaining safe. And whereas Mike McAvoy served on the Waterloo Public School Board of Education for 14 years, including several as board president, during which time he received several accolades and was widely respected as a diplomatic and accessible leader. And whereas during his term as board president, Mike navigated the district through an emotional and hotly contested process to form the DC West School District. And whereas Mike McAvoy also served for 14 years on the Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department, serving as assistant fire chief for several years, he received training as an EMT and specialized training in water and ice rescue due to the proximity to the Elkhorn River. When he started, the department was very low in numbers, and he was part of a major recruitment effort that helped the department get to full force. And whereas Mike McAvoy was also the longtime co-chairman and organizer of the Waterloo Canoe Race, which at one point was the largest in the Midwest, bringing people from across Nebraska and several surrounding states to enjoy outdoor recreation on the Elkhorn River. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby honors Mike McAvoy upon his retirement and further expresses its sincere appreciation to Mike for his many years of public service to the residents of Douglas County, dated this 24th day of August, 2021. So congratulations, Mr. McAvoy, and I think your family should be proud of you. You're a role model not only to them, but also to the citizens of our county. So with that, do I have a motion? I'm making a motion.
There's a motion by Commissioner Maureen Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any other comments? I just have a few. I think goes all the way back to the John Love days.
Oh, yeah.
And you have been a stellar citizen of Waterloo and Douglas County, and we can't thank you enough for everything that you've done. You have been through some pretty tumultuous events, one being that DC West, but you can say, look at us now.
Right.
And they are thriving, and they are doing a great job. And the Waterloo firefighters out there are also doing a great job. And so again, you should be proud, and your family should be proud, and I know you are, but we're proud and we appreciate all that you've done for Waterloo and for Douglas County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, yep, comments from you all?
No, I just, thanks a lot, thanks for the recognition. I just like to help people that, they're on every board, everything I've been on, they should be getting awards too. The firefighters, go out and risk their life every day, and they don't get paid a dime for it.
That's right.
Quite a commitment.
Yep.
I'll tell you, I was on a school board for 14 years, and I was on a fire department for 14 years. The school board, I would not suggest you ever run for that, because that is the most. Anybody say everyone knows what I'm talking about. The fire department was very, it was very gratifying. It was very hard to do, but it was a gratifying job. So
It was, yeah, thank you.
that's all I got.
Okay, Commissioner Rogers.
Yes, sir. I want to thank you for your service, but that story just reminded me, just followed the word telling, there was a guy named Dale Bumpers that used to be the governor of Arkansas, and he was on the school board, and he said the reason he ran for governor was to get off the school board.
I do remember that. That's right. That's right. Okay, with that, could we please vote first? Yeah. All right, well, put me down as a yes again.
Yep. Motion passes 6-0.
And we can go in the front here.
Okay, hold on, we'll get one first.
Oops, sorry. All right, we will move to citizen comments. Anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Patrick McDermott. I attended the jail standards meeting in Kearney on August 13th, and I was very surprised to find myself the only one from Douglas County in attendance. So I thought it prudent to report to you on what I observed. I endeavored to do so from contemporary notes without adding any comments of my own, just so you understand what actually happened. The board did indeed approve the construction plan, finding that it met the criteria of Title 18. However, that approval was not as full-throated as some would have you believe, but was the product of what the board felt was their lack of power under Title 18. They noted the lack of power to consider the element of need for new juvenile facilities, and this facility was described to them by their own staff as a situation where someone who had an adequate house just wanted to build a new one. Their words, not mine. They questioned why a new facility was needed in light of the fact that 42nd Street was fully licensed with a greater capacity and better located. They did conclude that they did not have authority at present to question the issue of need. They did express a desire to revise Title 18 to include need as part of the criteria. When the motion to approve construction was made, its proponent declared on the record that he was making the motion only with a clear understanding that before an occupancy permit would be issued, the following conditions had to be met through programming. First, that the population of juveniles being held for adult court would be completely segregated from juveniles awaiting juvenile court proceedings. Secondly, that the present plan to bring food from 42nd Street campus was not feasible and an alternative plan would be required. Thirdly, a determination that the natural light from the day rooms actually reached the sleeping rooms. And fourthly, that adequate parking for staff and visitors at the new facility was not clear and needed to be assured. I think the sooner you start developing plans to meet those conditions, the less you fear some kind of last-minute problem when you go to get your occupancy permit. I want to close on the one positive and complimentary thing the board had to say. You need to know that the Jail Standards Board was very complimentary of and acknowledged the great effort that Brad Alexander and his staff undertook to address the issues raised in the April 12th letter to the commissioners, and that good progress had been made as a result of that collaboration. I just wanted to report on what I saw, since I was the only one who's long been interested in this project that was there. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda, please come forward, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Maxwell Ostick. Do I need to give my address?
No, you
at the
don't
county?
have to.
Okay. This is the first time I've ever been here to the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, and I came at the last minute. I was listening at home and felt like I wanted to come in person, so I apologize, I'm a little out of breath.
Just relax.
I'm here because I feel like there is nowhere else to go. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids in the Millard Public Schools, and they are in middle school and high school, and I have a wonderful husband, and we have a family member with an underlying condition. And so the COVID-19 pandemic has been extremely difficult for everybody, of course, but we've been very careful in our family and had kept our kids home on remote learning last year. We were so pleased that the Millard Public Schools teachers were amazing, stepped up, and our kids, I think, wished, of course, they could have been with their classmates and their teachers, but the teachers did an amazing job. I cannot say enough about our public schools and how much a fan I am of them. However, unfortunately, our school board and superintendent have not implemented safety protocols that were in place last year regarding COVID-19 and wearing masks in school. And that is very concerning to me. My kids attend Millard North Middle and Millard North High, and we have classmates with siblings at Montclair, which is where my kids previously attended the Montessori program, which again, I will put in a plug for Montclair and their Montessori program, offering that as a free option to parents that want to opt. They have 2 classrooms shut down at Montclair, and they have instituted a 28-day mask policy within the building, and I commend the principal for doing that. And I am wondering how many classrooms will need to shut down throughout the city and the county before we actually move and be proactive to protect these children. My kids met the age requirement when they opened it up for eligibility to 12 through 15. My kids are 12, 13, and 14. And so when they opened up the eligibility, I was so blessed that I could take my kids the next day. There was an opening at Hy-Vee, and I cried as they were given their first shot. I was excited and optimistic that our community would take advantage of the science and the potential of the vaccines, and that we could hopefully move to a more normal school year. That hasn't happened. And my children wear masks to school. That is important to protect themselves as well as others. We know that people who are vaccinated can still contract and transmit COVID-19, and we would not want to pass that on to anybody else inadvertently. I'm here because our Millard Public School Board is not following CDC guidelines or the American Academy of Pediatrics, UNMC guidelines, or the Douglas County Health Director's recommendations. And there are other schools in our community that are not as well. And I have been in contact with the city council member for my district, and he did tell me that he would not support a mask mandate again in Omaha. And we talked about the science, and he had said that there's both sides and that it is important to offer choice.
1 minute.
As a mom and a community member, I don't have a choice to send my kids to a safe environment where everyone is working together to protect each other from COVID-19. I am upset that our governor is working against public health and safety, and I understand that in the past there was a threat of a lawsuit if Douglas County institute a mask mandate. But I'm hoping that we can overcome that and that people will stand up to do the right thing. I just don't believe protecting children should be political. I didn't know where else to go, so I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda?
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. Once again this morning I'm going to speak about the Open Meetings Act. I'm glad that our community reporters and community columnists are here today, because I want to say that I have issued a letter requesting an explanation by the Attorney General, State of Nebraska, but also Douglas County Attorney Office. Not a lawsuit, just a full open debate, which I have asked for before this body before and was denied. I can go back to February of 2020, when the debates between commissioners up there were very heated. And none of you called them out or sent them out because of their behavior or their words. We even had 2 commissioners that stepped down to the microphone as citizens because they felt there were no rules. Like Elmer Fudd, there's no ammunition. There were no rules. So my comments today, and the reason I'm sending a letter, and I'm going to ask for a visit with the Attorney General's office, is that the body politic across Omaha, all the different agencies and bodies, and including Fremont, all seem to be kind of playing with the rules. The Open Meetings Act was not updated over there until just last week with the April update to it. The Omaha Public Schools put a brand new poster up there just last week. The other one was removed after I commented about it. But they put theirs in a nice big poster that you could read from the chairs. You really expect a citizen to go over there and read that while you're meeting? No. There was a page or 2 added to the old pages that are in there. There have been some slight changes even recently. Anyhow, I'm going to ask for a full, open explanation and directive from the Nebraska Attorney General as to what the intent, first of all, of the Open Meetings Act is, because it's clear, and I have a bunch of documents here to repeat this. I'm not going to hand them all to you. I've got a stack even more of that of the various bodies, particularly Omaha, where a lot of those roles seem to have been played with. As I mentioned, as far back as February 20th, which is not within a lawsuit. But I'm not trying for a lawsuit. I'm trying to get you guys to do your duty as you're supposed to towards the citizens. I won't read the Open Meetings Act intent to you because you can do that. I have 3 variations of the Open Meetings Act here with me. I won't read those, and I'm not going to hand them to you because you can do that too. But they have been changed slightly. Most of it is to your benefit. Just playing around with Robert's Rule of Order versus parliamentary rules. When is the citizen going to clearly be able to understand what rules? There is only one rule, and that's the Constitution, the United States, and the state of Nebraska. The right of a citizen, first of all, freedom of speech. In the Declaration of Independence and all through the Constitution, the right to petition his government. That doesn't mean I have to go out on the street and have how many people sign a petition. It means I have a right to come here. But some of you don't get that. And I'm sorry if you don't like my words.
1 minute.
Even public school boards are kicking people out now. And they're the farthest off. They didn't have a Pledge of Allegiance, and they didn't call attention to the Open Meetings Act 2 weeks ago. I was not at one meeting, and they kicked a guy out the previous week for making statements like I'm making here. But again, it was public comment and put at the beginning of a meeting so that you can't comment on anything you heard. And that's another complaint that I'll be asking about, is why should I not be able to talk about something that is on the agenda? Because not every agenda item says it's a public hearing. Not every agenda item do you ask me if I want to comment. So you're playing with the ability of the citizens. From our standpoint,
Time.
you are
Thank
restricting.
Thank you, Larry. Time. Thank you. With that, anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to our presentation. We have a COVID update and COVID-19 vaccination plan update presented by our Health Director, Dr. Lindsay Hughes. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
We have a lot of ground to cover today, which is why I'm bringing a lot of stuff up here today. Give me half a second. All right. So I thought first we would start with our usual death by data review here. As you can see, this week, we remain in the high category for our COVID transmission, and just as a review of that, high is defined as the number of total cases over a 7-day period per 100,000, and also on our case positivity rate in the county. Since we met last, we did have a change in some of our indicators and some of the data that we use, and I just want to point that out to you quickly. Some of these indicators are going to look just a little bit different from maybe what you have seen in the past. So previously, you were seeing a number in this upper left box that looked something more like 22, 25. Now you're seeing 200. That is because this metric has actually changed to better align with that transmission tracker that you see on the front page. So this is actually total number of cases per 100,000 over a 7-day period, whereas before you were seeing a per day. So it's a little bit different, but it does align a little bit better, not only with how we're reporting, but with how other agencies are reporting. So it does give us a little bit better comparability if we wanted to do that. It also allows us to plot our metrics in different places a little bit. So when you're toggling between charts, you have the opportunity to kind of see that visualized in different ways. So you'll see here on this graphic that the background is in green, yellow, orange, and red, and that corresponds with that tracker on our homepage. So just to give you a little bit of context, 2 weeks ago, this number, so 201, was in the 120s. So we have clearly increased quite significantly over the last couple of weeks, and that is borne out, as you can see, on the increase on the graphic as well. Another great thing that happened with our data over the last couple of weeks, and that's not good that we have no data here, is that we actually were able to update our denominator data from a 2018 data set to a 2019 data set. That allows us, obviously, to report a little bit more accurately, so we're really happy about that. I'm not really happy about the fact that I can't show you our age groups. What I can tell you is if we were looking at this graphic right now, what you would see is that the proportion of cases that are occurring in our under 19 age group continues to grow. So there's been a little bit of variation. You know, if you break that down to 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 15, and then on up to 19, you know, you would see some variation in those bars. Some weeks they're more, some weeks they're a little less, which you would expect. But overall, that chunk of ages, so basically our school age kids, that group of ages is increasing steadily over time. I wish I could show it to you. We have been updating our denominator data on a number of places, and so occasionally our dash glitches as we're doing that. So we can look and see what our numbers are looking like on our map. There we go. So this is for the week ending 8/14, and I realize that that's a little bit late. Typically, our data updates kind of later in the afternoon, and so we're waiting for that update to come, and then this will be a little bit more up to date. But as you can see, if you think back a couple of weeks ago, what you had was kind of this dark orange corridor that was towards the Central West area. And as you can see now, it's really diffusing more throughout the county. We do have a hotspot in 68104 where we appear to be having kind of more cases. And this is the week before that, and this is a little bit more where you started to see that corridor before. Our hospitalizations right now are sitting at about 80%. Again, you know, this is a snapshot from day to day, so take that number with a grain of salt. Tomorrow it could be 85%, then it could be 82%, but we're sitting pretty steadily in the 80s. Our ICU usage is also sitting very steadily in the 80s right now, and our ventilator use has been very slowly increasing. So where before we were seeing between 12 and 16 people on a ventilator, we're now sitting between 18 and 19 people on a ventilator. So slowly we are seeing more severe cases. This definitely is borne out in conversations that I've had with our health systems. I was over at Nebraska Med yesterday and had the opportunity to talk to a couple of our physicians there who confirmed that they're seeing much sicker patients than they had been seeing until recently. So then as you can see, this is patients in the hospital. So you can see at the beginning of August, you know, we were down here at 84. We're well over 100 now. We're sitting at 145 today. So basically, all of that to say, we are definitely continuing to see our cases here in Douglas County increase. So what are we doing? Well, we continue to vaccinate. As you can see, we are having a steady but slow increase in our doses administered here in Douglas County. This is a very, very, very shallow increase in doses administered. Now, we had some developments this week that came out. Pfizer was approved fully by the FDA this week. We anticipate that some who may not have felt comfortable with vaccination under EUA may start coming in to get that. So we're very hopeful on that end. We also got news last week that there's a recommendation for a third dose for those individuals who are immunocompromised. So that is something that we are actively working to get out into the community, and indeed, there are places already administering that. So our folks in the community who need a third dose are getting that. We are not currently tracking that. At some point, we will probably stand up some metric that will allow us to talk a little bit more in depth about that. But as it is right now, because it's so new, we don't have a good place to put that just yet. There also is a recommendation for boosters that's coming out, and that will more than likely be for people who have been vaccinated more than 8 months prior. We do not expect that to be fully recommended until sometime in mid to late September, so we're awaiting that. We are making plans to ensure that can go off smoothly in the community as well, so that we can ensure we're getting boosters to those who need that. Right now, 64.3% of our Douglas County residents over the age of 12 are fully vaccinated, and over 12. And then of the whole population, which would include those under 12s who aren't quite eligible just yet, 53.2% are fully vaccinated. As far as having one dose goes, 69.8% of our over 12 population has at least one dose, and then 57.8% of our total residents. So those kiddos that aren't eligible yet are included in that number. Something that changed with our data as well, that I just want to point out to you all, is that we have a better ability with this new 2019 population or denominator data set to break out by age group. So before, we only could break down to, I think it was age 15, and so it was a little bit confusing. We were not maybe capturing the whole population that was eligible when we were talking about those. We do now have the ability to at least start at age 12 with that data. So as you can see here, the 12 to 15, and this is for fully vaccinated so this is over age 12, but then broken down by age group. 12 to 15, 42.4% are fully vaccinated, and then 16 to 19, 53.6% are fully vaccinated. So that is good news. However, we need it to be better. It's very clear that transmission is still happening. So this week has been extremely tough in terms of COVID here in Douglas County. Last week, we closed several classrooms in Millard School, sending home nearly 100 children in that district. And over the weekend, we sent letters keeping home over 140 kids and staff members in the Ralston School District. If you think about that, that's not just almost 200 kids that are stuck at home to try to do their learning for potentially a number of days, almost 2 weeks. That represents potentially a couple hundred parents that are kept home from work for an extended period of time, managing their learning at home. Those kids are now disrupted from their learning plans, and not all of those parents, I would wager, have the luxury of paid leave time to take care of this. We are now talking about impacting not just kids' educations, but compounding that with families' economies being impacted. For some of those kids, school is the only place that they are safe. It's the only place that they get a regular meal, and it may be the only place that they feel loved. So why aren't we just letting them stay in school? After all, kids don't get as sick as adults, right? Well, that is not always true. In Omaha, we have been lucky not to see the hospitalizations, the ventilator usage, and the deaths that are on our PEDS units here that other cities in our country have been seeing. But what has happened is that many of those kids continue to take COVID home to their families and infect their parents, their grandparents, their friends, and others who may not yet be vaccinated or whose immune systems just aren't up to the task. Those folks are ending up in the hospitals and on ventilators. How do I know that? Well, I've had the tough conversations with our local health systems and looked into the exhausted eyes of our healthcare providers as they relay these stories to me. I've heard the alarm in their voices as they tell me not only about the 50 or so patients that line the hallways of the emergency rooms every day, but about the nurses who are broken from a year and a half of witnessing serious sickness and death and are now still showing up totally broken and caring for the public, even though the public doesn't even care anymore. Our kids deserve protection and they deserve an education. Our families deserve protection and they need to be able to provide. Our health systems are barely treading water. And folks, I will tell you right now, it takes a lot to break a nurse. We have a little tool that can fill the gap from where we are right now until we can get transmission to a manageable level and a vaccine approved or authorized for our elementary school kids. This is hard right now, but we can make choices that can make our path easier. Today, with support from Douglas County Board of Health, I sent to DHHS a request for approval of a directed health measure temporarily mandating masking in Douglas County. This measure would require masking for all persons over age 5 in indoor public settings with some exclusions until 2 benchmarks are met. First, our community transmission drops below the substantial category, which is in line with current federal guidance. Just for a little refresher, that's that transmission tracker on our front page. Second, until 8 weeks have passed since a COVID vaccine is approved for children between the ages of 5 and 11. This will allow for at least a first wave of children to become fully vaccinated and develop immunity. With Delta variant spiking across our community, we can't afford not to act. And this is not forever, but it is for the best. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you have today.
Thank you, Doctor. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you, and thank you for this. Excellent. Just some quick questions, and this is kind of following up on our previous discussions just to get us a timeline here. If I'm reading this correctly, we've gone on to your COVID website to look at this. We're kind of where we were a year ago at this time.
We are just a little worse than we were a year ago.
Okay.
Yes.
And, you know, a couple months ago, we were substantially better than we are right now.
Correct.
If I understand you correctly, and we've heard from a mom here today, this is going to impact our school population, is impacting our school population now that they're back there, particularly in those schools that don't have a mask policy. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. We saw the map last week where you had the zip codes that were most impacted, and there was a considerable correlation between zip codes with school districts that didn't have masks being worse than zip codes with school districts that did, with you know, an exception or two. Now it seems to have spread through the community. This map is much worse than last week's map because this is a contagious virus. And so those that initially had it spread it to the rest of the community. I've got kids, and a lot of people can relate to this, I suppose. We live in OPS, but they play basketball, the Y League, or they play, you know, swimming in Metro League or whatever. Kids are interacting, and so that aids in the spread. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
So we're looking at a spread now that you can trace if you look at the evidence that you provided from these unmasked school districts to the rest of our community. The cases to date, I think you show are at 76,836 in Douglas County. The deaths in Douglas County to date, 743. The one thing I couldn't see here is what is our current positivity rate?
The last I checked, it was over 15%. I'm not sure what it is today. I haven't seen the report on positivity rate for the last couple of days.
Okay, if I recall.
It's pretty substantial, though.
Yeah. If I recall, a couple of months ago, it was in maybe low single digits, is that right?
If I remember correctly, yeah.
So it's more than triple where we were at the beginning of the summer.
Sure.
The availability of vaccines is now down to what age level?
12.
12. And are we aggressively pursuing those populations, the 12-year-olds and up, to make sure that as many of them have vaccines available as possible?
We are, yes. We have many efforts going on, really pursuing a number of populations, including those that are in the adolescent age group.
So looking at our vaccination graph, and I just lost it on my screen, but can you bring that back up?
Vaccinations?
Again, real quick.
By age?
Just the age one is sobering because it shows such an increase in the younger population. But the graph that shows, the total number of vaccinations that we're able to do in the community,
Find it.
and it again shows that we've kind of come to a low level. That was the one, I think, the one just before. There you go.
That one right there.
So we're kind of plateauing at a low number
Here.
there. Is there anything that we can do to
1 minute.
bring that number up substantially as quickly as possible that we're not doing?
Yeah, again, we have increased the number of clinics that we're providing in our community. So we're taking our vans out and parking wherever we're asked to park to provide those vaccines. With the full approval of Pfizer, we are hopeful that that is going to cause more interest in coming in to get the vaccine. And we continue to work with our our community coalitions to make sure that we're standing up sites in places where those who aren't vaccinated can very easily get in to get those. So we're continuing outreach to get those.
Do we have vaccinations available inside all the schools in our community?
The schools are not vaccine providers, so it's a little bit complicated in how you get that approval.
Time. Commissioner Maureen Boyle.
Thanks so much again for that presentation. I think you've really helped with the frustration that as healthcare providers we sometimes have. There feels like there's almost an ambivalence in a lot of our patients, or a disregard for the fact that medical staff really are giving everything they have for this, and just feel like the work they're doing is it's being done, but it doesn't have to be if people are vaccinated. And so I really thank you very much, not only for acknowledging what our nurses and physicians, what we're all doing in the front lines, but also for putting forth this directed health measure. I think that's what it really is going to take to turn things around. I don't think, because this is not the novelty has worn off about COVID being a pandemic, and so I don't think regular citizens, until they're in a hospital setting, realize that we're at a critical state again. I don't think that the gravity of it all is being felt at this point. And by stating what you stated, you're completely acknowledging that. I think that the directed health measure hopefully will get us to turn the corner. None of us want to be wearing masks or forcing vaccinations on people, but if that's what it takes to get through this, that's what it takes. So can you give any further details about the directed health measure? When does it take effect?
Sure. If it was approved by the state, it would go into effect tomorrow. However, they can still say no. So we are waiting for basically hearing back from them on their answer. That went to DHHS, so I know they're busy as well. So I would anticipate that there is some discussion that needs to happen at their level before we hear back. Basically, it would mirror a lot of what you saw last year in terms of, You don't have to wear a mask when you're eating, obviously. We did put in an exclusion for under 5, which does deviate just a little bit from what the current CDC recommendations are. Generally, outdoors, you don't have to mask, but we, of course, still recommend that people are doing that in those close congregated situations, and it would apply to schools. So, there's a lot of struggle right now happening with the fact that we are trying to keep kids learning. Most of the schools have done away with their virtual learning plans, and so when they go into, if they have to stay home because there have been a number of exposures in a class, basically they may have a very limited amount of virtual learning that can happen, and then from there on out, it's basically like when you and I were kids and we, somebody had to gather up all of our books and assignments, and you had to figure it out on your own. So imagine doing that for a number of days and trying to catch up then after that. And imagine that being an entire class or a teacher having to pivot everything they're doing for an entire class. So we're really trying to avoid that. And this would help to take a lot of that struggle out of the equation for our schools.
Completely agree. I think it's disappointing to know that this has turned into a political issue. So I appreciate your efforts to do the right thing from just a medical standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Going back to the age group infections, I'm looking on the dashboard, and this is under cases, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Positive cases by age group and week ending. And this is a troubling graph. It's actually the middle one that's not showing up there.
Is it showing up for you?
It's not showing up on the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it showing up on yours? Because it sounds like you have it pulled up.
Well, I can see it here.
Oh.
I can't see it there.
Well, let me see if I can, I wonder if I can get it up here. I have a couple of those that don't seem to be.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, it's always this way. It's the one thing you want to see.
Of course.
And
because it can't
so
be easy,
I think
right?
Dr. Boyle's got it there.
Oh, you're
iPad.
wonderful. Look at that. It does work. Yep. Oh, Karen disappeared. There it is.
There we go. It was there a second ago. It's a little drawn. There we go. If you could bring it up just a little. There you go. Okay. And I'm no statistician, but it looks like we're looking at a school-age epidemic. I mean, the number of people getting infected seems to be weighted towards the younger demographic, where at the top end there, it was older folks. Is that right? I mean, we're looking at a school-age epidemic right now.
Sure. Something that might make this a little easier for people to visualize as if we zoom in.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, so this is like 4 weeks of data, and I know it's a little blurry, and I'm sorry about that, but I think you can get the picture. So the kids, so under 19, you are looking at everything that's grass green and below. So if you look at that chunk, you can actually see the growth over the past 4 weeks of those color blocks.
Right.
Comparatively, if you look at the other age blocks, they have remained virtually the same size. I mean, maybe a little bit of growth in that turquoise one that's right above the green, but for the most part, those numbers have remained somewhat consistent. But when you're looking at the adolescent and the kids, that block of ages, which really, we're just calling that the school agers, right? That has definitely grown exponentially. So statistician or not, your eyes are not lying to you. What you're seeing is a trend.
So for our vulnerable children population here that you demonstrated, the infections growing in that population, real clear so people can understand, what's the best thing that we can do for those vulnerable kids right now that can't get vaccinated?
Until they can get vaccinated, We need to have other measures to limit transmission. And in a school setting, or in any other setting that they're visiting, you made a great point. It's not just about the schools, okay? We can't just put the onus on a classroom. They're going to play club sports, they're going to the Y, they're going, I mean, you name it. They're gonna go to trampoline world, whatever. We need masks. We need something in place that can be used regularly, that can limit transmission until such a time that we can build immunity in our unvaccinated population.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome, thank you.
Commissioner Friend?
Hi, Doctor. Thanks for the information. Very valuable. And Dr. Boyle is right. I mean, the troubling thing to me is worldwide, not just nationwide, how political this whole thing has become. And it's difficult for me, and I think difficult for a lot of people in our society to grab hold of information and try to decide whether it's actually being disseminated for political reasons or if they're gathering the right type of data that is based on the type of metrics they can trust, right? And this is a short story, but I think it's valuable for everyone, and it's certainly not making me out to be a hero or firefighters in the city of Omaha out to be heroes. Do we have a vaccine that reduces the effect of RSV?
We do have one for kids.
Okay. But RSV will never be wiped out to the best of our knowledge, right?
Not that I know of.
It's not funny. Yeah, and you're not laughing. I was going to laugh, but it's not funny. About 25 years ago, my son was about a month old, and we lived in a small house over in Keystone, and he was diagnosed with RSV, a month old. My wife knew that we had a problem, and we brought him home. He was in the doctor's office. We brought him home, and he couldn't breathe very well, and she was laying on the couch with him, and right before I went to work, she started screaming, and I walked in, and around his mouth was all purple. So I grabbed him, and with an infant, a 1-month-old, you're not supposed to breathe, take a deep breath to give him mouth to mouth. I mean, his heart was beating, I could tell. So I gave him mouth to mouth, and I'm lucky I didn't explode his lungs. No more than 4 minutes later, the firefighters, my wife called 911. Omaha Fire Department, they were heroes on that day. I guess the reason I'm telling that story is I didn't have COVID 25 years ago, but I was deathly afraid of RSV. When we got him back to Children's, there were 12 infants in NICU with RSV. So it was a different fear for me back then, and COVID is a fear now, and I totally understand that. The difficulty I'm having is going back to Dr. Boyle's point. Nobody was politicizing RSV back then. Everybody knew it was a problem, and I lived with that fear for the next 2 kids that we had, and they got RSV too. We got to get past all that. In all honesty, I don't care if people wear masks. I kind of draw the line at sticking a needle in somebody's arm against their will. And I am all for the promotion of the vaccines. I've gotten them. I'm telling that story because I'd like you to opine on this. 25 years ago, it was something totally different. And we have scared our public to a point now. How many kids are over at Children's right now with RSV compared to COVID? I mean, it's a valid question. I don't even know if it's rhetorical.
It's huge right now.
Yes.
We're in the middle of an outbreak, so yes.
I've lived the last 50, well, I'm 59. I've lived the last 50 years of my life scared. And not always, but a lot. And that scared me. And it still scares me. And I'd like to be able to have people dice through these numbers and make it less political. That's my speech.
1 minute.
I was scared then, I'm scared now. And the thing is, I want to make sure we're doing things to alleviate that fear that make perfect sense. I don't trust the media. I don't trust the information that's being disseminated. I trust your information. This is clear. The metrics are clear. But I want to make decisions going forward that are not politically based. So I would agree with Dr. Boyle. If we can cut through some of that, I'd appreciate it. And that's my, sorry, Madam Chair, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Boyle?
So I don't know if you want to address what my colleague was talking about the information being out there and that masks do make a difference. And so, and that you can have an opinion to say masks aren't a big deal or are a big deal or not, but the bottom line is I wear a mask to protect the people around me. Mm-hmm. I know as a physician treating COVID patients and working on call over the weekend that I've been exposed. I'm sure you just know it because COVID patients are all over. So I'm wearing a mask to protect the people around me. I've been vaccinated. I'm healthy otherwise. So and the data is clear on that from what I know. The other thing that's aside from that is we're going to be having some big events here in the city of Omaha. What are your feelings or thoughts or recommendations regarding these large congregations?
Yeah, so it's a balance between living our lives and protecting ourselves and protecting our neighbors. And I really, I'm often torn between knowing how needed connection is right now in our community. I feel that. I'm an introvert, and I feel that. It's bad when the introverts are asking for more connection in the community. And really, putting on a mask is something that is very simple and does not restrict your freedom to move about, to go to events, to do the things that allow you to have some of that connection. And so that's why I kind of have been harping so much on let's put on masks, let's put on masks. Vaccinations are coming. Let's get vaccinated too. Absolutely. I think that is our very best thing that we have to control this. It's like many other communicable diseases that we've had and managed to claim victory over the decades. Think of polio, tetanus, pertussis. We've largely been able to control things because of vaccines. So great, wonderful. We're not there yet, though. We need to buy time. Let's put on masks so that we can continue to do the things that we want to do and still have the human connection. When we were in lockdown, that was tough. I mean, people didn't just struggle, they suffered not being able to have connection, not being able to be with the people that they needed to be with. And so as much as we're able to do something that allows us that balance, I want to do that.
Yeah. Right. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right. No other questions or comments? Anyone from the public wishing? Can you put the
You want it down?
No, the gallery of people so I can see if anybody's hands are up.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm trying to stop the screen share. Okay.
There you go. Okay. All right, I do not see any hands up, but again, thank you, Dr. Hughes, for your work and the presentation today.
Thank you.
With that, we had one public hearing, but that has been stricken from the agenda. As far as committees, there's just the finance budget report as presented. We have minutes from our Child and Youth Committee and the weekly personnel report from Civil Service that has to do with under Human Resources. And then we have one resolution approving the enrollment agreement with Professional Development Academy a NACO-sponsored company to provide online leadership training for county employees. And this is the second cohort of employees that will be taking this, going through the Leadership Academy. And so I would ask for a motion to approve. Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Maureen Boyle. Any questions or comments? Please vote. Would you put me down as a yes?
Will do. Commissioner, there we go. Motion passes 6-0.
We do have need for executive session, legal advice, and personnel. Is there a motion to go into executive session for those purposes? Yes. Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote. Put me down as a yes, please.
Jim just left. Let's just go. Motion
Recording
passes.
stopped.
Motion passes 5-0. Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent. All other commissioners who are present voting yes.